Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to our first episode of Wacky Wednesday, a weekly series where we explore some wacky deck ideas in both standard and modern. And this week we're taking a look at Enduring Ideal in Modern, which as the name implies is a deck built around the card Enduring Ideal, which is a 7 mana sorcery all the way from Saviors of Kamigawa that says search your library for an enchantment card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. And Enduring Ideal also has Epic, which is not an ability you see very often, which means for the rest of the game we cannot cast any spells, but instead at the beginning of our upkeep we get to copy the Enduring Ideal, which means that every turn, instead of casting spells, we will get to search our library for an enchantment and put it into play. So this means that the deck heavily revolves around enchantments, since that's also the way that we're gonna close out the game. And our main win condition, once we resolve Enduring Ideal, is to search up a Form of the Dragon, which is a 7 mana enchantment that says at the beginning of our upkeep, Form of the Dragon deals 5 damage to target creature or player. And then, very thematically, at the beginning of each end step, our life total becomes 5, and creatures without flying can't attack us. So it's basically like we transform into a dragon and throw fireballs at the opponent or their creatures. So that's the way we can close out the game. Of course, we also have a lot of different enchantments that ensure that we can survive until we get to cast our Enduring Ideal. So let's take a look at the entire deck, starting out with a Lotus Bloom, which is hiding between our lands, which is an artifact with Suspend 3, and the Suspend cost is 0, so we can pay 0 mana to suspend a Lotus Bloom. It will be put into the exile zone with 3 time counters on it, and at the beginning of our upkeep we can remove a time counter, and once all time counters are removed we get to cast the Lotus Bloom for free. And once we get to cast Lotus Bloom, it's basically a black lotus, so we can sacrifice it to add 3 mana of any one color to our mana pool, which if we can suspend Lotus Bloom on our first turn, on turn 4, Lotus Bloom comes off of suspend, we get to cast it, and if we have 4 lands plus Lotus Bloom we'll have access to 7 mana, which is enough to cast Enduring Ideal, which is our main game plan. So that's Lotus Bloom. Next up we get to some of our enchantments. For 2 mana we have a Journey to Nowhere, which is a way to deal with opposing creatures, as when Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield we get to exile target creature, but if the opponent can somehow destroy Journey to Nowhere they will get their creature back. Then we have 2 copies of Suppression Field, which is a 2 mana enchantment that says activated abilities cost 2 generic mana more to be activated unless they're mana abilities. So that means that we're not gonna have to pay 2 extra mana to sacrifice our Lotus Bloom, because that is a mana ability. But fetch lands, on the other hand, are not mana abilities when the opponent wants to sacrifice them, so Suppression Field is very good against decks relying on fetch lands in their mana base, which we of course do not, and is also very good against various effects, like for example Planeswalkers also require 2 mana to be activated, and there's plenty more situations where Suppression Field interacts favorably for us. And next up we have Ruined Halo, which is a 2 mana enchantment that when it enters a battlefield we have to choose a card name, and then we have protection from the chosen card name, which means we can't be targeted, dealt damage or enchanted by the chosen card. So most of the time this is just going to act like a removal spell for an opposing creature that's already in play. We just name that card and can't be dealt damage by that card. And if the opponent happens to have multiple copies of that same creature in play, then Ruined Halo can deal with all of them. Of course, Ruined Halo doesn't properly deal with utility creatures, as it doesn't actually remove them from play, so cards like Dark Confidant, mana creatures will all still do their thing, but we're just trying to buy time until we can cast our Enduring Ideal and win the game that way. Ruined Halo can also name non-creature cards, for example Gifts Ungiven also targets us, so we can prevent our opponent from searching up any cards. We can also name Planeswalkers like Liliana of the Veil so that she cannot ultimate and force us to sacrifice a bunch of permanents. We can also name Valakut the Molten Pinnacle so that Scapeshift players can't finish us off with their lands, and there's a lot of other applications as well. Next up we have Spreading Seas, which is a 2 mana enchantment, enters a battlefield enchanting a land, and then we also get to draw a card, and the enchanted land will become an island. So this is mostly used to mana screw the opponent or to deal with problematic utility lands on the opposing side, and this just cycles, so gets us closer to our Enduring Ideal and to our other cards. We also have 4 copies of Ghostly Prison, which is great against any creature strategies, because creatures can't attack us unless their controller pays 2 generic mana for each creature that's attacking us. So this also buys us a lot of time, since the opponent will be forced to spend all their mana just to attack with a few creatures, and if we have multiple copies of Ghostly Prison in play, then the opponent will have a very hard time attacking us. We're playing 1 Oblivion Ring, which is a nice generic answer to any problematic permanent. Then we have 1 copy of Phyrexian Unlife, which is also an interesting one to search up with our Enduring Ideal, and can also buy us a lot of time. So Phyrexian Unlife reads, you don't lose a game for having 0 or less life, but as long as our life total is 0 or less, all damage dealt to us is dealt in the form of infect damage, which of course 10 poison counters means we're dead. So the idea behind Phyrexian Unlife is that it combines very nicely with Form of the Dragon, which resets our life total to 5 at the beginning of each end step. So let's say the opponent has 10 power worth of creatures attacking us when we're at 5, then our life total would become -5, but we're not dead thanks to Phyrexian Unlife being in play, and then at the beginning of our end step, Form of the Dragon would return our life total back to 5, and we have never taken any infect damage, so we're not at risk of dying. So one way that the opponent could kill us through Phyrexian Unlife plus Form of the Dragon is by dealing 5 or more damage in first strike damage, for example, and then the regular damage, if it's more than 10, would deal 10 infect damage and kill us on the spot. Another way, for example, would be by dealing 6 damage worth of burn spells before attacking with creatures. That way our life total would be below 0, and then the rest would be dealt in infect damage. So there are a few ways that the opponent can still win through Phyrexian Unlife plus Form of the Dragon, but of course we have many other enchantments that can ensure that that doesn't happen. But Phyrexian Unlife without Form of the Dragon is still a way to buy some time, since it essentially gains us 10 life, since if the opponent puts us to 0 or less, they still have to deal 10 infect damage to actually kill us. So just buy some more time until we can cast Enduring Ideal. Then we also have 1 copy of Copy Enchantment, which is a way to, as the name implies, copy an enchantment. So when it enters the battlefield, we can choose any enchantment that's in play, and Copy Enchantment will enter the battlefield as a copy of that enchantment. So it just gives us some flexibility to choose an enchantment that's already in play that we perhaps want a second copy of. Then we also have a copy of Detention Sphere, which is basically a second Oblivion Ring. It's typically better than Oblivion Ring since it can deal with multiple permanents with the same name. The only drawback of Detention Sphere is that it cannot target an opposing Detention Sphere. So if we're playing against blue-white control, for example, we still want to have access to the classic Oblivion Ring to deal with opposing Detention Spheres. Then another very important card in the deck is Leyline of Sanctity, which is a 4-mana enchantment that says we have hexproof, so we can't be the target of any spells or abilities from the opponent, and if Leyline of Sanctity is in our opening hand, we can reveal it and start the game with it in play, which is very powerful against any burn deck or decks with a lot of hand disruption that are trying to Thoughtseize or Enduring Ideal. Then we have 1 copy of Sphere of Safety, which is just a bigger version of Ghostly Prison, so creatures can't attack us or planeswalkers we control unless the controller pays X, where X is the number of enchantments we control, which most of the time will be greater than 2, so just a better Ghostly Prison. Then another very important piece of the puzzle is Dovescape, which says whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, that spell gets countered, and then that player creates X 1/1 white and blue bird creature tokens with flying, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. So one of the first enchantments that we search up with Enduring Ideal is Dovescape, since this turns any relevant card from the opponent into a bunch of bird tokens, which are gonna have a hard time attacking us through Ghostly Prisons and Sphere of Safeties. Of course, those bird tokens do have flying, so they can attack us even if we have a Form of the Dragon in play, but we just have to be careful when we sequence our Enduring Ideal targets. And then finally, of course, 4 copies of Enduring Ideal. Then a quick note about our mana base. We've got 3 copies of Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, which is also very important, as it can ramp us into Enduring Ideal thanks to our devotion to white. And our devotion count to white is pretty high thanks to our enchantments, especially Ruined Halo counting for 2 devotion, as well as Leyline of Sanctity, which can sometimes start in play and add 2 white devotion. So Nykthos can also help us ramp into Enduring Ideal. Then we also have a copy of Mistveil Plains, which has some interesting applications. So let's say our opponent has somehow dealt with our Form of the Dragon. Mistveil Plains can be used to put that Form of the Dragon back on the bottom of our library, and then we can search it up once again with Enduring Ideal. We also have a copy of Irrigated Farmland, which we can cycle, or just counts as a plains and an island, and enters the battlefield tapped. We have 4 copies of Hallowed Fountain, which also counts as both a plains and an island, which is all important for Glacial Fortress, which looks at plains and islands being in play to come into play untapped. Then we also have a Calciform Pools, which we can sink some mana into to add a lot of mana on one big turn where we cast our Enduring Ideal. And then 4 Temple of Enlightenment, which enters battlefield tapped but lets us scry 1, which can help us look for Enduring Ideal when we need it. And then 7 Plains, which we're gonna fix the art. There we go. 7 beautiful full art plains. Then taking a quick look at the sideboard, we've got 2 copies of Porphyry Nodes, which comes in creature matchups. 2 copies of Rest in Peace against graveyard decks. Stony Silence is great against Affinity, although it does also stop our own Lotus Bloom, so we have to keep that in mind. Then we have 2 Grand Abolisher against control decks, so that they can't counter our Enduring Ideal unless they deal with the Abolisher first. We've got 3 copies of Kor Firewalker, which is great against the burn decks, also adds 2 Devotion for Nykthos. Then we've got a Rule of Law for Storm decks, and then Nevermore, that can also prevent the opponent from casting a certain card. And then we also have Boseiju, which ensures that we can resolve our Enduring Ideal against control decks. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which has 2 Lotus Blooms and Nykthos. I think this is a keep. We are just missing our Enduring Ideal, but we have some disruption in the form of Suppression Field and Sphere of Safety. Opponent with a Thoughtseize turn 1, so they're gonna see our beautiful hand. And they might just take the Suppression Field, I think. Could also see them take a Sphere of Safety, but I don't think there's much point in taking a Lotus Bloom when we have 2 of them. Opponent does indeed take the Suppression Field. Another Nykthos a draw. Alright, let's scry with our Temple. And yep, let's keep that on top. And then suspend 2 Lotus Blooms. And pass a turn. So now we have to hope we get to our Ideal before our opponent finds another Thoughtseize. Alright, Mardu, interesting. Faithless Looting. So this could be Mardu with the Prowess creatures that draw 3 cards, mana cost reduced by the number of instants and sorceries in the graveyard, as another Thoughtseize took our Sphere of Safety there. So let's play a tapped Hallowed Fountain and pass a turn, and hope our opponent doesn't have a 3rd Thoughtseize. Inquisition would be fine, as our opponent fetches. And there's a Leyline of the Veil. Alright, so we can just discard a Nykthos here, but we will need to keep cards in hands so that we don't need to discard to Liliana. Lotus Blooms come online next turn, so we'll have access to 6, 8 mana. So we could play around double Liliana by not playing out a land here. So I'm actually not going to run out any lands here, and we're just gonna hope that we can cast our Enduring Ideal next turn. So 4 mana. Is this a Flashback Lingering Souls? It is, that's fine. And another Flashback Lingering Souls, and then is Liliana gonna plus? She's not. Alright, sweet, so we get to cast both our Lotus Blooms. And another Glacial Fortress to draw, so we can cast our Enduring Ideal here. Had we played our land, we only needed to sack 1 Lotus Bloom, but this is fine. Play out Enduring Ideal, and now the question is, what do we get first? Don't need to deal with the Liliana quite yet, so I think we get a Dovescape first here. And then might as well play out our Nykthos and say go. Of course, the relevant part with Dovescape is that Enduring Ideal doesn't cast a spell but puts it into play, so it doesn't get countered. Liliana pluses. We can get rid of a land. Opponent discards Goryo's Vengeance. Alright, that's interesting. So they might have some Gristlebrand's lurking in their deck, perhaps. The Lingering Souls get in for 4. And opponent just passes. Alright, so what do we get now? Don't need to deal with Liliana quite yet. Don't want to get Form of the Dragon when we don't have a prison effect in play yet. Think we just get a Ghostly Prison here. And then play out our land and say go. So next turn we might have to deal with Liliana, and the turn after we can get either Form of the Dragon, or if we want to play it super safe we can get a Phyrexian Unlife first. Liliana up to 6. Opponent can only attack with 2 spirits here. Alright, so now I think it's time to deal with Liliana, so I think we just get an Oblivion Ring here and then keep the Detention Sphere for later. Could also get a Ruined Halo, but I feel safer getting Oblivion Ring to deal with Liliana. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, so didn't even need to get our Form of the Dragon there. So up against Mardu, perhaps Reanimator, as we saw Faithless Looting and Goryo's Vengeance. Rest in Peace seems pretty good, although our opponent could end up thought seizing our Form of the Dragon, and with Rest in Peace in play we don't have the Mistveil Plains to return it, so that could be a problem. Could perhaps see Porphyry Nodes doing work against Lingering Souls tokens, but it doesn't seem necessary, so just do Rest in Peace coming in. What do we take out? Can probably shave our 2 Journey to Nowhere and try it like this. Alright. We're on the draw here with double Leyline, Lotus Bloom, Mistveil Plains. I think this is a keep. And put our 2 Leylines in play, which are pretty good in this matchup against all the hand disruption. And Liliana of the Veil Count ultimate. Nile Spellbomb, that's fine. Doesn't do much. Also cannot target us now with the Leyline in play, so that's relevant. So let's just play a tapped Mistveil Plains. Suspend Lotus Bloom, say go. Opponent sacrifices Spellbomb. Just to draw a card. And a Lotus Bloom ticks down. Alright, Calciform Pools, not a bad one. Don't know what we need to name with the Ruined Halo yet, so I'll just play out the pools so we can put a charge counter on it. Faithless Looting. I imagine our opponent has Gristlebrand in their deck. They just discarded 2 Thoughtseizes that are pretty useless against Leyline. End of turn, put a charge counter on it. Lotus Bloom down to 1. And Temple of Enlightenment, not bad. So we can scry towards Enduring Ideal. I think we can put this on the bottom. And say go. 4 mana. Flashback Faithless Looting. And just 2 lands going to the graveyard. So we still don't have a good idea what the opponent's trying to reanimate. We could run out Ruined Halo preemptively here and just name Gristlebrand. Let's cast our Lotus Bloom. Draw Plains. Yeah, given that we have Copy Enchantment and can still copy the Ruined Halo and name something else, I feel okay running out Ruined Halo here and naming Gristlebrand, which is the most likely reanimation target. Opponent still gets to draw 7 cards off of it, but at least it won't deal 7 damage to us. 5 mana. Fulminator Mage. Alright, that's pretty annoying as it gets to destroy our Calciform Pools. Alright, that happens. But we still have 7 mana with our Lotus Bloom here. Opponent says go. Spreading Seas. Alright, let's play that. And let's see, opponent has triple black, lots of white. I guess we can put it on the Prairie. Let's Spreading Seas the Rugged Prairie here. Draw a card. Another Spreading Seas. Alright. Can run that out next turn. Opponent fetches up a Godless Shrine. And there's a Death Shadow. Alright. It's just a 2/2 here. And the Lingering Souls, which can also be flashed back here. Alright, so opponent's got a clock going. Irrigated Farmland, so we could cycle that, but I think we start by playing out Spreading Seas. Draw a card. Let's run out Glacial Fortress. And we could Oblivion Ring the Death Shadow here, which we probably want to do, or we can Copy Enchantment Runed Halo naming Death Shadow. It's probably better here. Let's copy our Runed Halo and name Death Shadow. And pause a turn. Opponent with a Tormenting Voice. Discarding Goryo's Vengeance. And there's an Obsidat. Alright, so that's what the opponent was trying to reanimate with their Goryo's Vengeance. Opponent gets in for 4 with their Lingering Souls. Death Shadow is not going to deal any damage. So just take 4. So this Runed Halo probably should have named Obsidat rather than Gristlebrand, but we didn't know for sure. So let's start by cycling this farmland. Alright, there's Enduring Ideal, and thanks to Lotus Bloom we still have enough mana to play it here. Probably want to start by getting a Sphere of Safety here, so that those Lingering Souls and Obsidat can't attack us. And then next turn we'll see if we already want to get maybe a Dovescape, maybe a Form of the Dragon. The opponent doesn't get to drain us with Obsidat thanks to our Leyline of Sanctity, so we only need to worry about the Obsidat attacking. Opponent goes to combat, just attacks with Obsidat. And puts us to 11. So I think we want to get Phyrexian Unlife before getting Form of the Dragon, just to play it safe. Could also see getting our Dovescape right now. That might be better actually. Plays around our opponent having some sort of removal spell for our enchantments that we get later, and still adds an enchantment, so our opponent needs to pay extra for Obsidat attacking. So we might go down to 6 here, then we can get Phyrexian Unlife, and then we can get Form of the Dragon. And then I think we're set. So we just need to hope not to draw those cards, and opponent decides to scoop it up. So yeah, next turn we were probably gonna get the Phyrexian Unlife, and then Form of the Dragon was gonna lock it up. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which I think is a keep. We've got Leyline to open up with, as well as Nykthos with Leyline is a nice combo, and then of course Enduring Ideal, which is always nice to have in our opener. And with Leyline it can't get Thought Seized, so that's good. And looks like we're up against Tron, and Basilisk Scholar indicates Eldrazi Tron. So the card I'm most worried about here is All Is Dust, which can get rid of all our enchantments. But Lotus Bloom there is a nice draw, as that will let us cast Enduring Ideal on turn 4. And let's put this on the bottom. They can't Thought-Knot Seer us thanks to Leyline of Sanctity. And Seagate Wreckage into Walking Ballista is fine, means that they're further away from casting All This Dust. And I think we might as well Journey to Nowhere the Walking Ballista. Even though it doesn't really bother me too much, it just adds an extra devotion for Nykthos. Our opponent could sack the Walking Ballista, but we have Leyline, so that doesn't work. Ghost Quarter is fine. Oblivion Ring also not bad. I think we just play a Plains here and say go. And then we have the option of cycling the farmland if we want to. But next turn we should be able to cast Enduring Ideal, and barring any main deck counterspells, we should be fine. Thought-Knot Seer, just a 4/4. Let's cycle this just because. Find another Leyline. Lotus Bloom comes off of Suspend. Let's cast that. And we just want to make sure our opponent can't cast any All His Dusts. So let's Enduring Ideal and look for Dovescape as our first order of business. And then the following turns we can search up some lock pieces so our opponent can't attack us, and then we can search up Form of the Dragon. Reality Smasher is fine. We will take quite a big hit here, but next turn we can get a Sphere of Safety. And there it is, and I think we want that over anything else. We could just exile the Reality Smasher with a Journey to Nowhere, but our opponent's pretty far from Tron, And if they have to pay 4 for 1 creature to attack, I think we're fine. So let's get a Sphere of Safety. Mistveil Plains is a nice draw, means that if we happen to draw our Form of the Dragon, we already have a way to put it back into our deck. Opponent pays 4 to put us to 6. And I think we'll get another lock piece here. Could also get a Phyrexian Unlife. I think if we just get a Ghostly Prison, it's probably the safest. And next turn we get Phyrexian Unlife and then we get Form of the Dragon. Could also get Form of the Dragon right now, I suppose, but I feel this is safer. Let's just keep our lands in hand in case we need to discard to hand size to put any enchantment in the graveyard. So now our opponent has to pay 7 to attack with the creature. Thought Seer is fine. And Color is fine. Alright, so I think we've got it. So I guess at this point we might as well get the Form of the Dragon. Don't really see how our opponent beats us from this spot. Now we're just gonna get our Phyrexian Unlife. And we'll deal 5 to the opponent. Let's get Phyrexian Unlife. And say go. Put the opponent to 10. Let's see what we can get here. I guess we get a Spreading Seas, just because. And enchant Urza's Tower. And I guess we'll play out the pools, just because. Alright, we got there. On to sideboarding. So Nevermore is a consideration, naming Alles Dust mainly. Karn Liberated is also something that can be a problem. Stony Silence could do some work, but it also shuts off our own Lotus Bloom, and I don't think it's relevant enough that it's worth bringing in. Unlike, for example, the Affinity matchup there, I think it's definitely worth it, otherwise it wouldn't be in the sideboard to begin with. I don't think we need to change much. Boseiju is actually also a consideration, since our opponent will have the colorless counterspell for our Enduring Ideal. So I could see bringing in Boseiju and maybe taking out a Plains for it. Don't think we need 26 lands. Yeah, I think this is a good configuration. Alright, this looks like a sketchy hand, but we do have Lotus Bloom. Yeah, I think this is actually still a mulligan, just because we have 1 land. If we had 2 lands, then Spreading Seas maybe draws us into a 3rd land, but as is, we need to draw 3 lands in a row basically, which I don't think is gonna happen. Alright, I guess this is a keep. Not a great one, but at least we have some spells that we can play out. So Mistveil Plains is interesting. We kind of want to draw lands, but also kind of don't. I think we put it on the bottom, given that we would rather draw Nykthos or blue sources. Lead with Leyline, which stops Ballista and Thought Seer mainly. Alright, there's our Enduring Ideal. Ruined Halo, probably gonna name either Thought Seer or Reality Smasher. Ratchet Bomb, that could be an issue as well, as it can blow up some of our enchantments. So we could run out the Ruined Halo here, or we could wait. I think we wait, since we don't know what to name yet. Ratchet Bomb up to 1. Is this a natural Tron? It's not. Opponent just with 3 lands here. And Walking Ballista for 1, that's fine. Another Enduring Ideal. I think we still wait on our Ruined Halo. I guess the argument to run out Ruined Halo is Chalice of the Void on 2. There's an Expedition map. Seeing Ratchet Bomb maybe makes me reconsider our Stony Silence. So now our opponent does have Tron. And another Ratchet Bomb. Well, at least if they wanna explode 1 on 2, they'll also kill the second one. So there's that. Alright, Suppression Field is actually not bad, since if we play it, our opponent has to wait a turn to use a Ratchet Bomb, and it makes it more difficult for them to use the Ratchet Bombs, although I guess with Tron online it's not that big a deal. I still like baiting with the Suppression Field, since I think the Ruined Halos are going to be more important, and this is definitely going to annoy the opponent a little bit. So we're basically waiting for a Nykthos or for a Lotus Bloom here so we can cast our Enduring Ideals. Reality Smasher. Alright, so we can Rune Halo Reality Smasher. Opponent's gonna blow up Ratchet Bomb. And then we'll run out the second Rune Halo. Boseiju, alright. Opponent charges up a bomb. Okay. And let's name Reality Smasher. And say go. So now the opponent is probably gonna either blow up the Ratchet Bomb or they're gonna start growing the Walking Ballista here. Expedition map is gonna get another Urza's Tower. So now they have 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 mana, so they can make Walking Ballista pretty big. But of course, we still have Suppression Field, so I guess they can only grow it once. Didn't even attack with Walking Ballista. Another Runed Halo, alright. So they get rid of the Leyline before they get rid of the Runed Halo. But then we're just gonna run out more Runed Halos, naming both Walking Ballista and Reality Smasher. We are gonna take a hit here. So the opponent sequences everything correctly. They still have 10 mana. Basilisk Scholar, that's fine, we don't have any creatures. So they can activate the Walking Ballista here and hit us for 7. Calciform Pools. I think we need to Rune Halo naming Walking Ballista here, since, let's see, the opponent will have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14 mana, so they can pump it 3 times. So yeah, the Walking Ballista is more of an issue than Reality Smasher at the moment. So we need to Rune Halo and name Walking Ballista. And then next turn we can Rune Halo naming Reality Smasher. And I guess we won't be able to use Boseiju this game. Ghostly Prison. It's not gonna work. And now we name Reality Smasher. Once again. And we're definitely still in trouble here. Our opponent has multiple turns to draw any relevant creature. Ghostly Prison doesn't do a whole lot against all this mana. I guess we're technically not dead, but Thought Knot Seer doesn't help. Opponent takes a Sphere of Safety. Alright, I guess we're dead. So, on to sideboarding. That Boseiju looked kind of poor there. Maybe it's not worth running the Boseiju after all, just because our opponent might just have the one copy that we need to worry about, and the life loss is pretty relevant. Stony Silence looked pretty good there, so we might want those after all. And maybe Ghostly Prison's pretty weak. If our opponent has Tron online, they can definitely pay for it. So we can shave a couple of those. I don't think we need Nevermore. I think Dovescape for all his dust should be enough. So let's submit. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand looks okay. Don't have our Lotus Bloom or Enduring Ideal, but we do have Nykthos plus a bunch of enchantments. Opponent mulled to 6. Let's lead with Temple. A Lotus Bloom can, I think, go on the bottom here, even though it's nice to have the extra mana, but with Nykthos we should be able to get there, and I would rather be closer to casting an Enduring Ideal. So let's put that on the bottom, say go. Urza's Tower. Another nice card in the matchup would be Spreading Seas if we draw that. Let's play a tapped Fountain, say go. Eldrazi Temple. Is this a Matter Reshaper? It is. So I guess we just Journey to Nowhere that, and the opponent won't get any benefit from their Matter Reshaper here. So pretty clean answer. Urza's Mine. Into Expedition map, so our opponent will have Tron next turn, which could be an issue. Ruined Halo. So we could run out Ruined Halo to also help us with Nykthos, but the problem is that we don't know if we need to name a Reality Smasher here or something else. I think we just say go here and hope our opponent can't resolve something too scary. I guess if they resolve a Karn, we can just Oblivion Ring it. So Reality Smasher is fine. And a Ratchet Bomb, which could be a problem here. A Leyline of Sanctity. So I guess what we could do is run out Oblivion Ring, steal the Ratchet Bomb, and then play out a Ruined Halo, naming Reality Smasher. Do get owned by All's Dust, but the problem is that we can't play out Dovescape because then we can't resolve any of our own spells, and we kind of need these to beat a board of Reality Smasher. Start with Oblivion Ring, get rid of the Ratchet Bomb, and then just hope our opponent doesn't have All's Dust. Run out Ruined Halo. Name our good friend. And say go. So we have 4 Devotion right now for Nykthos. This looks like an All's Dust. Nope, 5. Big Walking Ballista. No, Ulamog. Wow. Well, that's a problem. So now our Devotion is down to 1, which means I think we're dead, unless we can find an answer to Ulamog and then draw Enduring Ideal. I guess that works. We can copy Journey to Nowhere. And then get rid of Ulamog. And play out a land, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we're still in trouble since we can't run out our Leyline here, which means our Devotion is not enough to generate additional mana, which means we don't have enough to play out our Enduring Ideal if we draw it, and Ratchet Bomb is gonna deal with our journeys in a few turns. And a second Reality Smasher is also just gonna kill us here. Alright, so Ratchet Bomb, kind of a problem. And Ulamog was kind of a surprise. But, oh well. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And this hand looks okay, so we'll keep. We've got Lotus Bloom, Temple to scry towards Enduring Ideal, and then a bunch of interaction. I think we put that on the bottom, even though we do want to draw more lands. I think we'll find more lands in between now and when we find Enduring Ideal. So we'd rather dig deeper into our deck, and for now we can resolve Ruined Halo and Journey. Opponent with Serum Visions turn 1. Could be any deck. And there's our Enduring Ideal, so now I kind of wished we had kept that land on top, but let's say go. If this is blue-white control, we could be in trouble as we see Spreading Seas. Yeah, this is gonna be an uphill battle since all these cards in hand don't do a whole lot. And they're probably gonna have a counterspell up next turn, although I guess if they don't have Mana Leak, it's probably just Cryptic Command, so we might be able to sneak this Enduring Ideal under a counterspell. We could actually copy Enchantment the Spreading Seas, and then Spreading Seas the Hallowed Fountain to hopefully draw into a land. I don't really mind that. Copy Spreading Seas, and Spreading Seas the Hallowed Fountain. Form of the Dragon, not really what we wanted to see here, since now we'll need to find a way to discard that. So from our start we kind of looked like an Ad Nauseam deck, but now our opponent's probably pretty confused, as we see another Spreading Seas, and a Flooded Strand. So if we can draw a land here, then we can resolve Enduring Ideal, and then I think we're fine, as we see another Serum Visions. So Lotus Bloom comes off Suspend, cast that, and there's a land, perfect. So we could even consider running out Form of the Dragon here, but I think we just set up for the super long game. Cast Enduring Ideal, and then the plan is to Mistveil Plains, discard Form of the Dragon, and get it back. So for now, I think we need to get a Dovescape, prevent our opponent from casting any non-creature spells, and go from there. Hopefully our opponent concedes before we need to go through our entire deck, but since they are a control deck, you never know. They might be prepared to play a long game. Alright, our opponent scoops, so no need to play it out. So against blue-white control, this is definitely one of the tougher matchups if they have early interaction. But Grand Abolisher should be great. Nevermore can name a counterspell, so I don't hate it actually. Rule of Law can stop Snapcaster, but that's pretty narrow. Boseiju definitely wants to be in a deck. Then what do we take out? Opponent could board in a few creatures, just because they might expect us to take out removal, so they might have something like Vendilion Click. Geist of Saintraft could be a problem. I guess if they have Geist, then Porphyry Nodes is an option, but I don't think we want to go that deep. So for now, I think we'll shave the Journeys. Suppression Field still seems okay. Ghostly Prison's not great, so we can probably shave a couple of those. So maybe we actually shave the ley lines that don't do much and keep in the Ghostly Prisons. And then we can even add one more card. I guess we can bring in Rule of Law and try it like this. Alright, so opening hand looks not great. I have a lot of mana but no action. I don't think that's a recipe for success in this matchup. Alright, still not great, but Temple of Enlightenment, Spreading Seas, I guess that can get us there. And Ruined Halo can go to the bottom. Also not a great card in the matchup, but it can name Celestial Colonnade. Let's play this and look for some Enduring Ideals. Opponent fetches. Alright, that can stay on top. If our opponent Spreading Seas us, then we can't play that turn too. Alright. I guess we'll Spreading Seas them back. And luckily this counts as an island, so this comes into play untapped. Spreading Seas the Hallowed Fountain. Draw a card. Find a Ruined Halo. Opponent might have a mana leak here, but I think we still go for it, as next turn they'll have access to Cryptic Command. And instead it's a Spell Snare, which was gonna get us no matter what. Serum Visions. Alright, I think we run out our Ruined Halo here and name Celestial Colonnade, unless this is another Spell Snare or a Snapcaster Spell Snare. Alright, Snapcaster Spell Snare it is. I guess we play a tapped Mistveil Plains. Does expose it to Spreading Seas, but I don't think it's gonna come down to using the Mistveil Plains this game. There's Form of the Dragon. Think we just run out our Unlife. Gets mana leaked. Can't pay for it. But I'm pretty happy trading for a relevant card there, as Phyrexian Unlife not the best in this matchup. There's the Celestial Colonnade, which is gonna speed up the clock. So we could use the Mistveil Plains on one of our enchantments here, but it doesn't really do much. I think we just play this tapped and say go. Another Spreading Seas on Nykthos. Ghostly Prison. Alright, let's run that out. And say go. Another Ghostly Prison. That's fine. If they have a Detention Sphere, I guess they can take both now. Yep, there it is. And this is the reason why we have a split of Detention Sphere and Oblivion Ring. Glacial Fortress. At some point the opponent might start activating Colonnades, but it looks like they're keeping on to at least a mana leak. Is this a Planeswalker? Yep, get in. That's gonna mean that we're probably dead next turn if they activate Colonnade. So I think we have one turn here to potentially draw out of it, although our opponent likely has a mana leak at the ready. And we drew a Glacial Fortress. So let's see if the opponent goes for it. Another Spreading Seas. Could have used the Mistveil Plains in response to put the Unlife on the bottom, but I don't think it really matters here. So we just get hit for 8, technically still have a window but very unlikely that our opponent doesn't have a counterspell in hand. There's a Lotus Bloom. Alright, let's concede and go on to our third game. I think we just run it back and hope for the best. Our opponent might bring in some more removal now that they saw the Abolisher. But then I guess if we don't draw Abolisher, that's good for us. One thing we need to keep in mind with Roll of Law is if we cast Lotus Bloom off of Suspend, we can't cast our Enduring Ideal in the same turn. We'll be on the play. This hand's not great, but I don't really know how a great hand looks like against control. I guess it involves Grand Abolisher and then a Lotus Bloom into Enduring Ideal. Think we try again. Alright, this is better. And this can go to the bottom. Even though we could technically cast it with a Lotus Bloom, it's not really our primary plan. So let's run this out tapped and suspend the Lotus Bloom. Let's say go. Next turn Suppression Field could potentially slow down the opponent. And then we have Ruined Halo, naming Celestial Colonnade most likely, could also name Gideon. Serum Visions. Is this untapped? Nope. So your opponent's not holding on to Spell Snare. Hallowed Fountain, so we could actually Nevermore name one of the opponent's counterspells, like Mana Leak or Cryptic Command. It's definitely an option. It's probably better than running out Ruined Halo right now, since we still have the Ghostly Prison that also kind of stops the Colonnade. So sure, let's run out the Nevermore. And I think we name Cryptic Command. The other option was Mana Leak, but we can get to enough mana to pay for Mana Leak, I think. Detention Sphere, let's see what it gets. Alright, so I guess we guessed correctly. Cast a Lotus Bloom. And there's Enduring Ideal, so we're one land away. Think we Ruined Halo and name Celestial Colonnade. And then hope we get to resolve Enduring Ideal next turn. Spreading Seas, that's fine. If our opponent doesn't play a land, they won't have access to Mana Leak. Alright, they do have access to Mana Leak. Oblivion Ring. I think we Oblivion Ring the Detention Sphere here. And they might Mana Leak this. Alright, that's fine. We will not sacrifice Lotus Bloom. Another Spreading Seas, that's fine. Alright, still no land number 4, so we're forced to run this out. Resolves. So our opponent won't be attacking us anytime soon, but we're also not really getting closer to resolving our Enduring Ideal, since now our opponent has a million counterspells up. Alright, Calciform Pools is actually a nice one, since we can save up some extra mana to pay for Mana Leak. I don't think we go for it here. I don't think our opponent would have Detention Sphere the Nevermore if they didn't have Cryptic in hand. They have a Ghost Corridor for the pools. And Elspeth, Sun's Champion. Alright, but the opponent is tapped out. And we already have a prison in place, so those tokens are not really a problem. So I think we got there. End of turn we can charge up the pools, just because. I guess we need to pay 2 extra for the Suppression Field as well. And same with our opponent, they can't Ghost Corridor us because of the Suppression Field. And I think we just go for it. Sack Lotus Bloom. Play Enduring Ideal. Search up or Dovescape. Nevermore also pretty good draw there, could have named Cryptic. Opponent also couldn't use Elspeth there because of the Suppression Field, which is why we didn't see any tokens. So yeah, hopefully we don't draw Form of the Dragon and we can search it up. Elspeth makes some tokens. So getting Form of the Dragon could be a little risky here, since our opponent could still attack us with a bunch of bird tokens they make end of turn. Cryptic Command gets Dovescaped. So they do have 4 bird tokens. And if we get Form of the Dragon now, they could attack us for 1, 2, 3. They could attack us with at least 4 tokens, so we would go to 1. I think we just go for it. Get Form of the Dragon. our life total becomes 5. Then we can get Phyrexian Unlife or another Sphere of Safety. Snapcaster end of turn, that's fine, since creatures without flying can't attack us. So it's just the bird tokens that could potentially attack us, but our opponent has to pay 2 for each. And we've got the Celestial Colonnade covered with Ruined Halo. Elspeth makes some more tokens. And the Elspeth ultimate is still pretty far. Timely Reinforcements make some more bird tokens. And let's put some storage counters on our pools. Is our opponent gonna Ghost Quarter us? They are. That's fine. Let's get a Plains. I guess technically we probably shouldn't have gotten the Plains, since that reduces the odds of us drawing an enchantment we actually want to get with Enduring Ideal. Form of the Dragon is gonna go to our opponent. We're not gonna redirect. And I think, let's see, do we get Sphere of Safety or Phyrexian Unlife? I think we get the Sphere of Safety first. And say go. So our opponent has to pay 8 mana to attack with the bird. Form of the Dragon goes upstairs. We will not redirect. And we will get a Phyrexian Unlife. And then we can copy enchantment, one of our enchantments if we want to as well. We can copy a Sphere of Safety, we can copy Form of the Dragon. There's lots of things we could have done there. Opponent with a lot of flyers now, but they can not really attack with any of them because of the Ghostly Prison and Sphere of Safety. They cannot even attack with one of them, so they're just gonna have to say go here. Form of the Dragon goes upstairs, and our opponent scoops. Alright, sweet, we got there. So Enduring Ideal, pretty spicy and actually pretty competitive as well. So I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.